Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say, being bonitos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. You know we love you in Africa, the Big C tribe, but there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful November 28th, 2018. Big C, how's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, it's been freezing and I've been running wild. This sports world has me in upheaval, especially after, last night's selection committee, on these playoff teams.
Yes.
It's like I still wonder what it means to have this ranking, and the season's still not over. It started 4 weeks ago. It's still confusing. You're guaranteeing some teams being in whether they win or lose.
Yep.
So why do we even play the last games?
I tell you what, they do it because of the love of money. They see it's all about money, trying to get how many teams into a conference championship. I think no matter what they say about the Power 5 conferences, I think Division II or the 1AA figured it out better. They have a 16-team tournament, and they make the tournament about the end of the season, not who's going to win the championship, but just enjoy the playoffs. We also have NBA basketball, and again, who would have thought that the LA Clippers, they were trying to run Doc Rivers out of town. Them good old boys are right at top of the heap of the Western Conference. Even in the Eastern Conference, there's a lot of teams that are paying attention to LA. I want to look at also the world of college football. So many people, as you talk about, who's going to get in, and who's going to get in and why? How long will this system last? And, of course, it's always fair in the world of the NFL. We have so many things that we love in Big C Sports, and I'm appreciative that all the things we talk about, Big C, it becomes relevant. But I want to get your thoughts on this thing that's going on down south. The SEC started their own network before everybody else. They're already positioning to have 2 SEC teams in the national championship games. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you look at this, they basically set it up for this. They had it there last year with Georgia and Alabama. And I listened to the bowl selection committee, their spokesperson last night, talking about you take the 4 best teams. You look at the intangibles, strength of schedule, people that you've played together on your schedule.
Yeah.
Now, when you talked about that last night, schedules that are similar, only people that have a similar schedule are Alabama and Georgia.
Yeah.
Well, they both played LSU.
Yep.
Now, when you look at Georgia getting drubbed by LSU by over 20 points, Charlton, and Alabama shutting out LSU, how is that a common strength of schedule? If one team dominated you and then another team dominated them.
Yeah.
Then you look at Ohio State with its 29-point loss to Purdue. Who else in this tournament has played Purdue that's ranked in the top 6? Nobody, Charlton.
Yeah.
And then when you look at Oklahoma, they had a 3-point loss to Texas. Even though they gave up 48 points, it was a 3-point loss.
Yeah.
Nobody else in this tournament has played Texas. So when you look at common denominators, Charlton, of teams that have played each other, only Alabama and Georgia will have played each other. Now, look at it from this perspective. Whichever one of those teams loses, Charlton, means that they're not worthy of going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you look at that, and you got to not discredit these teams that have lost earlier, and they're sitting there with these records saying, well, Oklahoma's given up too many points. Ohio State was inconsistent. You can say that about anybody. Georgia had an inconsistency stretch through their schedule.
Yeah.
Clemson had a couple toughly fought games. Charlton almost lost one game they had to pull out in the last minute.
Syracuse,
against Syracuse. So they've had some challenges throughout their schedule. Even early in the season, Charlton, they weren't covering the spread in the first 3 games of the season.
Yeah.
So, as you look at these things, Alabama had several games. They didn't cover the spread against teams that were not ranked in the top 50, Charlton.
The
not
Citadel.
Top 25, in the top 50.
Yeah.
So as the crew wants to sit up and say, well, these are the worthy and best teams in the country. This is just like watching a beauty contest.
Yeah.
You know how we've talked about Drew Brees, that nobody wants to think about him as the greatest quarterback in NFL history because he doesn't have the marketability of an Aaron Rodgers who can't win a game on the road. Okay, Drew beat you anywhere. He doesn't have the amount of Super Bowls that a Tom Brady has. Nobody does.
No. No.
But he has all the statisticals, in the NFL.
Yeah.
Touchdown passes he'll have.
Yep.
Yards he'll have. Completions he'll have. 400-yard games, Charlton, more than anybody. When you think of 5,000-yard seasons, no quarterback has had as many as he's had. He's had 5.
Yeah.
So this is what we're looking at in college football. If they stop lying to the masses out there saying that this is a tournament that's made up of the Power 5 conferences,
Yeah.
you have to look at which conferences have been in there every year. The SEC has been in this tournament every year, Charlton.
Yep.
Every year. The Big Ten has been in this tournament every year. The ACC has been in this tournament every year. The Pac-12 is not. The Big 12 is not, Charlton.
Yeah.
So when you talk about fairness and impartiality when it comes to this tournament, be realistic. Just like these teams have their own networks, Charlton.
Yep.
You talk about the SEC network.
Yeah.
I know the Pac-12 is coming up with their own network.
Yeah.
The Big Ten has a network, but the SEC and the Big Ten have the biggest networks out there.
Yep.
I'm quite sure that the SEC will be grabbing one and coming into fold with it also, Charlton. The Longhorns have their own network out there, so I don't know if that's part of a Big 12, but I know they have their own network.
Yeah, they got their own.
So just like Notre Dame has its own network.
Yeah.
So is there fairness and realistically a chance for all the conferences to be involved? And when you think about it, I'm not good at math, and I keep telling you that. I'm not a rocket scientist.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have a problem with a measuring cup.
Don't we all?
Trying to figure things out.
Yeah.
So when you got a Power 5 conference, and automatically you're alienating 2 of the conferences, how does this tournament work? It should be guaranteed the best 4 teams and 1 from each conference, Charlton.
Yep.
Let's put it out there correctly. If you're going to say this is about putting the best 4 teams in this tournament from the Power 5 conferences, do that. But go with the suggestion that I stated a few months ago, Charlton. Take the best team from each one of those conferences.
Yeah.
Number 4 and 5 play, Charlton. They have a playoff.
Yeah.
They see who will be in there playing against number 1.
Yep.
It's rightfully that you do that. Don't keep saying we're going to take 4 teams, we're going to exclude 2 conferences. If this is about the Power 5 conferences, Charlton, then you got to put the winner of the Pac-12 in.
Yeah.
You got to put the winner of the Big 12 in, Charlton, as well as the winner of the ACC. The Big Ten has got 23 teams in it, I believe, and the SEC.
Yeah. I think that what you said makes sense. The NFL does that. The NFL says if you win your conference, you're going to get into the playoffs. You could have a 10-6 record, win your conference, and there
You could be 9-7 and win your
9-7 and win your conference. And that's the fair way to do it, because the only way you say we're going to choose who goes in there and not consider a conference champion, then teams will schedule a cupcake schedule. When USC scheduled Notre Dame for their last regular season game, Alabama, they scheduled Citadel before the Iron Bowl. Georgia also played a weak team before.
Georgia Tech.
Well, before Georgia Tech, they had another team on there that was a small program.
Massachusetts. They played Massachusetts.
Exactly.
They played Massachusetts and Georgia Tech back-to-back games, Charlton. After the game, Massachusetts fired their coach.
Yeah.
After the Georgia Tech game, Paul Johnson retired, the Georgia Tech coach. So they played 2 coaches that were on the way out. So how much did they really put into their teams as far as getting them ready to play Georgia?
That's true. And what you just said, and I want the whole sports universe to listen, that this whole thing that we talk about is when you think about what Chris Ault did. He was a Hall of Fame coach back at the University of Nevada when he implemented a national playoff system, I think back in the 1979 season, 78 or 79. He's the one who started that playoff system for colleges, D1 AA at the time. And now they've expanded that. When I look at programs like Appalachian State that's moved up the ranks, Big C, when you have that bracket, and colleges can follow what is happening right now all over the country on the high school level. You win your league, you get the chance to go on to the playoffs, because it's about determining who the better team is, not how many bowl games can we have. We're going to have bowl games for sure. But if you want to do it right, you already have the example out there. Division I AA does it. They take teams and they bracket 16 teams, and they find a way to do it. Now, they don't have an extra, 40 bowl games that year to have a 10,000-seat crowd sometimes, but I think they do it right. Chris Ault was ahead of the pack back in 1978-79 when he started that Big C. I think that's an example that has worked. That's why it's been so successful, Big C. It's D1 that keeps changing every 7 or 8 years, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you talk about that, Charlton. I believe it was the 79 or 80 season when 1AA went to the 14 format of a playoff. It expanded after that. But not only, Charlton, did they go to the 14 format of a playoff, they also created the overtime rule that we now see in college football. You know, the 1A, the Division I football can take so much from the lower divisions and say that they started that, Charlton.
Yeah.
But what they did was they got it wrong in what they did. 1AA didn't wait 8 years, 10 years to say, okay, we're going to expand this to get it right.
Yep.
They did it within a couple years, Charlton, that they saw that 4 teams wasn't enough, that it was unfair to the top 8, top 10 teams in the country, Charlton. That you could have one loss and you couldn't make the playoffs. You've won your conference title. You couldn't make the playoffs, Charlton. So they found impartiality in doing that.
Yeah.
But, 1A tried to say, okay, we'll take the Power 5 conferences. How do you determine the Power 5 conferences, Charlton? When you look at these conferences and you look at the overall win record in these conferences, we talked about the SEC.
Yeah.
You have 2 teams in that division, Charlton, with at least 11 wins. Only 2. No other teams other than those 2 have 10 in that conference.
Wow.
You look at the Big 12, Charlton. Only 2 teams in the Big 12 had 10 wins. That was West Virginia and Oklahoma. But West Virginia cannot play in the championship game because Texas is going to get that divisional win, even though West Virginia beat them. You look at the Pac-12, Charlton, only 1 team with 10 wins. They can't even play in their conference championship.
Wow.
That's how bad that is. And you look at the ACC. Only 1 team in that conference, Charlton, has double-digit wins.
Wow.
That's Clemson. And then when you look at the Big Ten, 2 teams with double-digit wins in that entire conference, Charlton. They got 23 teams in the conference. Only 2 teams with double-digit wins. That's Ohio State and Michigan. But yet Ohio State has to play a 4-loss team in the conference championship game.
Yep, and
that's a 4-loss team. Just like in the Pac-12, you got 2 9-3 teams playing for the conference championship, and the team with 10 wins is excluded from it.
That's a very good statement you made. I think if you look at what's happening in college football, and people want to say we got to get Georgia up there because the strength of schedule. Their strength of schedule. Now, if I get my math right, Central Florida, they beat an SEC team last year in Auburn, a team that started preseason ranked in the top 7 in the United States. Now, Auburn's lost a couple of times. That Central Florida team, they're still undefeated. They haven't lost a game in 2 years. To not have, if it's based on putting teams with the best record in there, you got to get a Central Florida up there. If it's based on competition, if someone can say that the win over Auburn was not a quality win, they beat who was on the schedule. They were put in the bowl game for the SEC to pad their stats, but they met their competition. I think you got to get Central Florida. Again, it doesn't matter what we think. The people with the money are going to rule out. But I want to just add on the statement you made. We talked about Alabama playing LSU, and then Alabama. I think who's common, the LSU, Georgia, and Alabama, those top 3 programs in the SEC. Well, Texas beat USC. I think it was 37 to 14 down in Texas. Notre Dame beat USC. I think it was 24-17 at the Coliseum in LA. So is Texas a better team than Notre Dame based on that? No, they're not. Notre Dame's undefeated. Texas is not undefeated, but Texas had a more impressive win over USC. Does that mean they're a better program than Notre Dame, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, look at Clemson and Syracuse. Notre Dame and Syracuse.
Yeah.
Notre Dame blew out Syracuse.
Sure did.
Clemson beat them on a last-second touchdown.
Yeah.
So when you look at the common factors in these programs, Charlton, Notre Dame blew out Pittsburgh. Syracuse had a tough game. I mean, not Syracuse, but Clemson had a tough game for at least 3 quarters with Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So when you look at that and you talk about Central Florida, and you look at how many teams in the top 25 in the country, Charlton, has 4 losses.
Yeah.
We've never seen this many teams in the top 25 before in this country with 4 losses. And the reason why those teams with 4 losses are in the top 25, so that the selection committee can go back and say, well, they beat the top 25 team.
Right.
Even though that top 25 team has 4 losses, now the justification for the strength of schedule comes into play.
Yeah.
Because you go back last year, Charlton, and see how many teams had 4 losses were in the top 25.
Yeah.
But they started getting criticism about that, Charlton, so they said, we'll simplify it. We'll move all these 4-loss teams in the top 25. But look how many teams, Charlton, with 2 losses that are in from 25 to 35 in the country.
Yeah.
You know, it really exceeds that.
Yep.
So as this bowl selection committee manipulates the numbers of the rankings of teams throughout the country, and yes, teams want to be ranked. They want to say, hey, you know, we finished in the top 25, even though we were 7-4.
Yeah.
All right, you know, 8-4.
Right.
At the end of the regular season, but we were a top 25 program.
Yeah.
You know, years ago when I played, if you had 4 losses, you didn't get ranked.
You're out. Yeah. Yeah.
Plain and simple.
Well, I want to get your thoughts on something. We know we have those top programs, and it's about just like in Washington D.C. You got enough boosters, you got enough people with media, and the people sitting down this bowl selection committee. Who are the bowl selection committees basing their picks on? Is who they know. No one's gonna root out their best friends team from getting in. It's a good old boy network. Just like the teams that travel their teams across the country, oftentimes it's based on who's going to bring the most people. But we know when it's a network of people who like each other, it's good old boys scratching good old boys back. I want to take you back to a time. It was, I want to say, the 1991 season. It was the Washington Huskies. They were undefeated out of the Pac-12 conference, Pac-10 at the time, under Coach Don James. And I believe that the Miami Hurricanes were also undefeated. While Washington went on to the Rose Bowl, they beat Michigan, the Pac-10, the Big Ten champion, and I think the score was like 34-14 at the Rose Bowl. Now, that same year, earlier in the season, Washington had knocked off Nebraska. I think it was 36-22 in Lincoln, Nebraska. They were both top 10 teams at that time. Later in the Orange Bowl, that Nebraska team was shut out by Miami 22-0. Well, they split the national championship. They were both undefeated. Many people felt that Washington was a better team in the West Coast. In the South, they said, no, Miami's a better team. They later played in 1994, and Washington snapped their 57-game home win streak at the Orange Bowl in Florida. Now, they were playing. Many of those same guys were on those two teams, Big C. Had they not had the chance to play, if it was just up to the vote, then the schools down south would have gotten the advantage. But when they played head-to-head, the West Coast won, Big C. Your thought with that system?
Well, Charlton, that's happened before where you've had undefeated teams at the end of the season and never got consideration for the national championship prior to this playoff system being implemented. You know, it came down to voters' likability. When we look at this selection committee, you talked about partiality that they have, Charlton. They have 6 former coaches on this selection committee. You know, and one of the things that crossed my mind, and I'm not too bright, why do you become a former coach?
Yeah.
Normally it's not because you're a winner.
Right,
okay?
right.
We see all the openings that are opening up now in college football. I haven't seen one coach in college football this season or even last season be fired because he had a winning record, Charles.
No, they don't.
So if you're a loser, how do you pick the best teams?
Yeah.
Why can't you take people who are qualified? I mean, you have a coaches poll. I think that's what it's called, the AP coaches poll.
Yep.
That the coaches vote on the best teams in the country. Now, you look at this coaches poll, why doesn't that say enough about who the coaches feel are the best teams in the country?
Yeah.
You know, but you got to go have a selection committee that say, no, these coaches are not knowledgeable enough to know who the best teams are, to know who their opponents have been, who they have played. We got to rely on these 13 people sitting in a room who probably eating baked beans and fried cheese sandwiches, you know, trying to get out of there in a hurry.
Yeah.
Okay? And saying these are the best teams in the country.
Big C, I got to ask a question. I know you Southern boys, you guys eat differently. How did you say baked beans and fried cheese? What's a fried cheese sandwich, Big C?
Well, you guys call them grilled cheese.
Oh, okay.
But you take some of that fried cheese sandwich and some baked beans on a hot day with no air conditioning, okay? And you lock them in a room together and see how quick they make their selection.
Blazing Saddles, I understand. Because every time I put cheese on the skillet, it crumbles. It messes up the skillet. So it's called fried cheese, but so do you put the cheese on the grill or do you get the cheese on the bread, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, you got the cheese on the bread. You got some little oil.
That's what I did wrong. Okay, that's what I did wrong. I was trying to I said, how they cook this stuff? All my cheese is stuck to the pan, Big C. But I'm not the best chef in town. I want to take your thoughts to another game, and because sometimes to see what's happening in the present, you got to look to the past. I might get the season wrong, but it was Notre Dame's last national championship under Lou Holtz, and they ended up playing West Virginia for the national championship down in Tempe, Arizona. Both teams were undefeated. Tony Rice was the quarterback for Notre Dame, and I think Major Harris was the quarterback for West Virginia. Both undefeated teams. But that year, it was when Notre Dame officials robbed Miami up at South Bend. They know what I'm talking about. They robbed them. Miami won that game, but you call a penalty or say something's not a touchdown or a first down. People know how to do that. So in the rematch, Jimmy Johnson wanted to replay Notre Dame. It's like, look, we're the best two teams in the country. Lou Holtz had nothing to do with it because he knew they had an easier way to the national championship by playing West Virginia. If they were in a bowl system, they couldn't avoid them. They would have had to be seeded. Give me your thoughts on what Lou Holtz thought back then. He avoided playing Miami again because they probably would have lost in a neutral field, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, Lou Holtz was a master musician and spokesperson and negotiator when he was a coach in college. He always wanted to make you believe. He was Bill Belichick before Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
Is that, the team that he was going to be playing was the greatest. They were going to struggle.
Yeah.
They had the best players that they ever faced. And I don't care if the team had 2 wins, Charlton.
Yeah, playing Temple.
And 8 losses.
Right.
That's how he marketed those teams.
Yeah.
So he was part of the hype of building up his opponent that he was going to have, Charlton, in a bowl game.
Yeah.
Is that he could sway the selection committees at that time, even on bowls. Hey, put this team in with us because they're more worthy.
Yeah.
And if they're more worthy, then you're going to get a better opponent than what you're going to get with those guys down there at Miami, because it's going to be a lot of ruckus and not a great played game if they're on the field.
Yeah.
So you talk people out. It's almost like what we have in politics now.
Yeah.
It's the fear-mongering that you put amongst people. Is that when you look at the midterm elections we just had,
yeah,
and people have to ask themselves, even in these midterm elections, is that why do you fear voting for a black person?
Yeah.
Why? What are they going to do to you? They're elected by the public to do the public's duty. They still have a checks and balances when they're elected.
Yeah.
But then you have to sit back and look at yourself. What are you getting out of the person that you elect? Because you said, well, I have to vote with my color.
Yeah.
Look at GM that's just closed down, Charlton.
Yep.
And you want to look at the tariffs that were put on the United States, put on all these foreign countries.
Yep.
Take it a step further, Charlton. When you look at the tax breaks that corporate America got, those tax breaks allowed them to outsource their products to a third world country, to another country, to not be produced here in America.
Yep.
So when people look at the president and say, well, I'm going to fine GM and I'm going to take away the government subsidies, how is he going to take away the government subsidies or the tax reform that he gave them?
Yeah.
Where he gave them a 7% tax cut. He can't go in and take that back. He can do lip service, Charlton,
yep,
and tell people that. But this is going to happen with even more and more American companies.
Yep.
That they're going to fire and lay off employees, but they say, oh, they can transfer to another plant. Now, you live in Ohio with your family.
Yeah.
But you can transfer to a plant in Kentucky.
Yeah.
Okay? You can just uproot. You can get out of your house and go to Kentucky and live.
Yeah.
It's not that easy because most of these people live from check to check because they knew what they were going to have.
Yeah.
You just can't leave one state and go to another state. And that's what we have even in college football, where you're telling somebody how good this is going to be. Then all of a sudden we look at it on television, and it's a dud. It's a blowout. You lied to us. You told us that this team was worthy, and they get shut out. A la Michigan State got shut out one year. Ohio State got shut out one year. And you spoke about Central Florida earlier, Charlton.
Yeah.
They lost their quarterback, Mackenzie Milton. The big talk in the media is like, well, they lost their quarterback. There's no way they can be in now. They need to drop out of the top 10. Go back 4 years ago. Ohio State had a quarterback, I believe his name was Barrett.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
J.T. Barrett.
J.T. Barrett.
Blew out his knee. They had this kid come in named Cordell Jones, I believe it was.
Yep.
That he went out and he drugged Miami and he drugged Oklahoma. Not Miami, but
Alabama. Yeah.
And Oklahoma.
Yep.
And won a national championship.
Yeah.
This was a kid that had not played. He'd been sitting on the bench. And all of a sudden, he goes out and wins the national championship after the starting quarterback had been injured and couldn't play in the final game of the season.
And they beat Oregon in that national championship over Marcus Mariota, the Heisman Trophy winner. So he was a guy that no one knew about until he got a chance to play. It goes back, I mean, history repeats itself. That's why we say, in the universe, history repeats itself. Oklahoma, I forget the season, but Troy Aikman was the starting quarterback. They played at the University of Miami down in Norman. It was like a top 4 matchup. And I will never forget, Troy Aikman had his leg broken. And Barry Switzer called Terry Donahue at UCLA and said, I got a quarterback that can fit your system. They brought in Jamil Holloway, was out of Southern California high school, All-American player, and he led Oklahoma to win a national championship by beating Penn State down in the Orange Bowl. It was 25-10. I'll never forget that year. Keith Jackson was a tight end that went on to play for the Eagles. And then Brian Bosworth was also on that team. It was one of the better Oklahoma teams. One of the better Oklahoma teams started with Troy Aikman, but they ended with Jamil Holloway. It did not stop them from winning the national championship. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this is why you can't sit there and play politics, which is being played now in the college football roller coaster, Charlton. Is that we got the teams that we want in. And what I told you earlier, it's about the teams and the size of stadiums that they have. If you look at the top 4 teams in this ranking right now, Charlton, the smallest stadium of all of them is Notre Dame with 80,000 seats.
Yeah.
But it has the largest alumni base in the United States. You know, that's what you look at. Then the next tier, Charlton, you're looking at Clemson and Georgia having basically the same size, around 85, 88,000 seat stadiums.
Yeah.
Alabama sitting up there at 102. But when you look at those other teams, Charlton, even Ohio State has 105, Oklahoma sitting at 82. You look at the top-ranked teams, Charlton. None of those top-ranked teams seat less than 80,000 people. Of the top 6 teams in the country, Charlton, none of them seat less than 80,000 people.
Wow. You
look at Central Florida, they may have a stadium that seats 42,000. So they're going to say, well, they're not going to travel. This becomes economic politics in college sports. When people want to say, well, sports and politics don't mix, this is all
it all
makes
sense.
This is politics.
It all makes sense.
In politics, to get people in, what do? You vote, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay, so what does this selection committee do? They vote also.
Yeah.
So when people say that sports and politics don't mix, they just want to talk about sports, then they shouldn't talk about college football and the bowl selection committee, because it's voting that's involved to get them there.
Yep. Well, I want to bring this up to you, Big C. We listen to our sports brethren, and unlike them, when we say something about them, we mention their name. We don't just say stuff and act like they came, like everybody that's talking about the sports universe. That came from Big C Sports. Google it from 3 years ago. I was listening to Jim Rome today for about 10 minutes, and he had on the basketball coach. Listen, sports and politics don't mix, right? He had on the college basketball coach from Mississippi State. That's the same state where Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, was reelected for her post in Mississippi. That's the same Caucasian woman that said she would go front row to a lynching in 2018. They've had over 4,400 lynchings in Mississippi, I believe. It was one of the highest states for lynching Black American men. And when they talked about it, ironically, Big C Sports was talking about Mississippi yesterday. Today, Jim Rome was talking to the Mississippi State basketball coach of all the states in the union. What do you call that? Ironic. He said nothing about this woman and the lynching of people who looked like 90% of his athletes on that basketball program. He wanted to see, because Jim Rome follows Big C Sports. So they went to Mississippi. They could have talked to the people at Duke. They could have gotten Indiana. They had the biggest game over the weekend. They could have reached out to UConn. They could have talked to Villanova. They could have talked to UCLA. They chose Mississippi, the same state that Big C Sports was talking about yesterday, but they said nothing about this woman sitting with POTUS and laughing about the lynching of people who look like the athletes that play basketball at Mississippi State. Big C, if you're going to plagiarize, at least plagiarize on the same subject. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, that's something that they don't want to touch on, is because they don't want to say, well, we're biased or racist. It's not being racist calling out a fact. If you call out a dunk in a basketball game, is that being racist because a black kid did it generally 90% of the time in the game? Is that being racist? They're such great dunkers, great leapers, great runners, such great athleticism. Does anybody ever think about, when they're saying that about a black athlete, that that's being racially profiling? They don't sit there and talk about how cerebral the kid is, how great a basketball IQ that he possesses, how he's a floor general, how he's a coach on the floor. We don't hear that about black athletes in college basketball, but we will hear that about the occasional white point guard that's out there, Charlton.
Yeah.
That's how they identify them. But, you know, even when you look at Duke, coached by Mike Krzyzewski, and you look at the players, he has 3 of the top 5 recruits in the country. All everybody talks about is their athleticism, how high they jump, how fast they run. This is how they describe. No one has talked about the intelligence of these 3 young men, the cerebralism of these 3 young men, the high IQ of these 3 young men. Does anybody realize Duke is an academic institution, just like Stanford, just like Harvard, just like Yale? It operates under that same grade scale. But no one talks about the athletes at Duke, about how intelligent they are. All we hear about is the athleticism. You know, we watched a little bit of Indiana last night playing, and they talked about this one guard from Indiana, how intelligent he was to be able to draw 4 offensive fouls from players in one game. He was intelligent. None of the other athletes was intelligent, but he was one of the few white players on the floor, Charlton. There's amazing thing about how intelligent he is as a player. You know, but, you know, you got to be fair when you do that. The broadcasters all the time use these subliminal messages about black athletes, whether it's in football, whether it's in basketball, whether it's in baseball, whether it's in track and field. They don't talk about the intelligence of these players. It's just like when I'm looking at the description now of Lamar Jackson, and everybody's saying, well, you know, he can't run that long. You got to look who his coach is, Charlton. And that's one of the things that the broadcasters don't talk about. What's the name of Lamar Jackson coach, Charlton? John Harbaugh. Okay? John Harbaugh. Where did his brother coach in the NFL? In San Francisco. Jim Harbaugh. What type of quarterback did Jim Harbaugh have in San Francisco that led him to success? Kid named Colin Kaepernick who can't get a job. Does anybody recognize the familiarity of the offense that's being run right now by John Harbaugh in Baltimore in comparison to what went on in San Francisco 5 years ago? I don't think any of these dumb butt broadcasters recognize that these brothers have conversations, okay? That they might get on the phone, that they might have some plays, you know, emailed to them. Say, hey, I sent the plays over. Open up your folders on your email, and you'll see these plays. And if you look at the similarity, go back 5 years, look at the San Francisco 49ers, what they were running offensively with Colin Kaepernick. You'll see a mirror image of that being run in Baltimore right now. Same offense, same type of athlete playing quarterback. But the media won't give credit to where credit comes from. That his brother had coached the similar type of African-American quarterback who was knowledgeable enough to be able to run that offense.
That's
who
great.
was able to execute it, because Joe Flacco couldn't. But Lamar Jackson can, Charlton. He's cerebral enough to know when to run and to when to throw the ball. And when people say, well, you know, he won't last long, has anybody criticized Baker Mayfield on any of the runs that he's had this year, Charlton? Has anybody, you know, criticized Josh Allen? He got hurt because he wasn't as good an athlete as Lamar Jackson. But no one criticized these guys as saying, well, they're running too much. You know, Lamar Jackson has 2 victories in 2 games. No other rookie quarterback can attest to that, Charlton.
I agree, Big C. I do want to say sports is a billion-dollar industry, and boys and girls sports is the foundation to this billion-dollar industry. For every athletic and sporting event, you need athletic and event insurance. We work with Ben and Mark. They've been around for 50 years. They work with Big C Sports, whether you're a pro team, a collegiate team, a high school team, or your mom and pop soccer league. When you reach out to them, let them know Big C sent you. I just think it's all how words, you know, words matter. They say Black Lives Matter, White Lives Matter, all lives matter. Words matter. And I even look at the euphemism when they want to credit a black athlete. They'll say he has a great basketball IQ, which is saying he's dumb in every other aspect of the word. They'll say to a football player, he has a great football IQ. That means he's dumb in every other aspect of life. They don't describe white coaches as having a smart football IQ. They don't describe a white coach as having a great basketball IQ. They just say he's intelligent. So even that euphemism of saying he's dumb, but he's smart in basketball, look, he knows how to dribble. And he can dribble and run at the same time. A great basketball IQ. In order to be in college, you got to pass an exam. Okay? if you're going to pass the exam, then you get accepted into college. If you don't keep your grades up, you become academically disqualified from the university. So even when they backhand and say, oh, he has a great basketball IQ, they're saying he's dumb in every other way. So I want to say to some of our sports brethren, they have a lot of sports brethren that have a good sports IQ, Big C. That means they're dumb in every other facet, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, it must be, Charlton, because they're equal to societal demands and needs, Charlton.
Yeah.
Because when I watch these guys on television, and all of them don't have a great sports IQ, Charlton,
No.
they might be able to read
Yeah.
because that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
90% of the guys on television are reading, Charlton.
Yeah.
They're reading a teleprompter. They have notes in front of them. And they'll say, let me go to my notes all the time. Because without those notes, they don't have anything. The true test of people who are knowledgeable in this industry,
Yeah.
Charlton, are people who can talk about and entertain you in a sports time, Charlton, when there's no sports that are relevant to that time.
Yeah.
That you can tell somebody, entertain somebody, and educate somebody beyond the score.
Yeah.
Because when you look, Monday morning, Charlton, is the easiest time to talk about sports,
Yeah.
especially the NFL and college football.
Yeah.
Those are the easiest days to talk about football. What day of the week are we on? Tuesday?
I think it's Wednesday. Happy Wednesday, Big C. Happy Hump Day.
Okay, we're on Wednesday. We're on Hump Day. That becomes a little more difficult.
Well, hold on,
It's
see.
game.
So what do you serve in your restaurants on Hump Day? Is there anything different on the menu, Big C?
Well, that's where we get the rollover menu on Hump Day. We roll the menu to look at the backside of the page, Charlie.
Yeah, okay.
Now you can go to the backside of the menu and order something.
I just want to make sure you're not serving up camels down there, Big C. You might get a lot more people coming to the restaurant. Good old boys. I want to say, as far as a guy that has a great sports IQ, I want to acknowledge Jim Rome. Okay? In Mississippi, has a coach on a basketball program, D1 SEC team, in the heart of black folks. Many of them meet the profile of those who were lynched, as Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith was reelected by the proud white families that voted for her. I just wonder if Jim Rome knew that was going on. But he's such a sycophant that he's going to talk about the guys, black basketball players, without talking about the things that really affect them and their parents. That's called a great sports IQ, because he's ignorant. And he has a great platform because he's ignorant. And he knows he's ignorant. Why come on a program and not talk about what's important to the athletes? But you want to appease the white coach. You didn't even ask him anything about how does that affect his players that the state senator is making jokes about lynching with POTUS, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when you look at the SEC as a total, and the Jim Crow law runs through the SEC states.
Yep.
It is the hub of Jim Crow law. The SEC states, SEC nation is the hub of Jim Crow law. And if people don't understand what Jim Crow is, what do you always tell them? Google it?
Google it? Yeah.
Okay, Google it. Google what Jim Crow means. And you'll see the oppression that these athletes live under in these states.
Today.
Yeah, they might be some of the top-ranked college basketball, football, and baseball teams in the country. And you say, wow, these kids are getting a great opportunity. But look at the size of the towns where they're attending college, Charlton.
Yeah.
You look at Tuscaloosa, Alabama. There's 80,000 people in Tuscaloosa, half of them at the University of Alabama.
Yep.
You look at Lexington, Kentucky. There's not a lot of people in Lexington, Kentucky. Louisville has all the people in the state.
Yeah.
You look at Auburn, Alabama, Charlton. They got less than Tuscaloosa, Alabama. So when you start looking at these SEC cities, Charlton, Knoxville, Tennessee, they're not rapid cities as far as access for African Americans to do beyond the sporting arena, Charlton. They may get a job working for a booster, but they're not going to get a corporate job working in those cities, Charlton.
No,
it's going to be very difficult. And most of them come from small outlying towns, Charlton, in those states.
Yeah.
So they come to that university, and then they end up going back to where they went, where they grew up.
Yeah.
If you look at the number of these athletes, Charlton, who have championship rings, conference championship rings, national championship rings on their fingers, look at the towns where they live in.
Yeah.
That's what you look at. The Mothership did a show years ago on Marcus Dupree. Great running back from Philadelphia, Mississippi. He was the best player in the country who ended up out at Oklahoma with Barry Switzer. But he's back in Philadelphia, Mississippi now, Charlton. because when he left Oklahoma early and went to the USFL, then to the NFL, there was nothing for him to go back to Norman, Oklahoma for, Charlton. They didn't embrace him.
Yep.
They didn't say, hey, come on back and we got you taken care of for life. He's a truck driver in Philadelphia, Mississippi. You know, I go back in the first SEC championship game, Charlton, there was a defensive back from Alabama who had a pick six that won the game. He picked off the Florida quarterback, and I can't remember the quarterback's name, but he played in the NFL for a couple of years.
Yeah.
The defensive back, Charlton, you know, he was a GOAT prior to that. Well, not a GOAT, but he was looked upon bad because he had made some bad mistakes in college.
Well, Big C, are you serving goat? Is that why goat got me? I just want you serve a great menu. I just want when you said goat, is that because goat? You gotta have a goat and cheese sandwich? Is that what you're saying?
Well, Charlton, you gotta understand the roast goat on the second man out there on that open fire.
Yes.
Oh man, that you know, that almond wood. You talk about some good tender meat, Charlton. That goat is awesome. But when you look at these players, Charlton, we always see the players who move on to the NFL and say, wow, you know, they're successful. But look around on those teams, Charlton, and when you got 100 players standing on the sideline, what's the likelihood of those African-American players, Charlton, moving into the corporate world with those boosters that they have the program?
Yeah.
You know, you're going to get the high-end white players, and this is not being racist or flippant. This is factual. The white players are going to end up with good corporate jobs. Matter of fact, the broadcast networks will hire half of them. You know, there was a quarterback when Cam Newton came out, and he was the number one overall pick in the NFL draft by Carolina.
Yeah.
There was a quarterback that faced him from that same state, saying that he was more NFL ready than Cam Newton.
Wow.
He said that. He got drafted in the last round. Everybody see him now on ESPN, okay?
Yeah.
McElroy, you know. But Cam Newton, if he had not have been successful in the NFL, you think he would have got a job with the mothership? No.
Nope.
McElroy gets the job, though.
Yeah.
But he was more NFL ready than Cam. You know, it's just like with Tebow. You know, everybody blasts Tebow, and the big comparison with Tebow right now is with Lamar Jackson. Yeah, well, you know, he couldn't throw, and they say Lamar Jackson couldn't throw. Tim Tebow, when he started for the Denver Broncos, went 7-8
Yep.
as an NFL quarterback. They made a move for Peyton Manning. They traded Tim Tebow. Tim Tebow didn't do anything to lose his job other than win and not fit the MO of the typical NFL quarterback. What he did was made it difficult on defensive players in the NFL because of his mobility, is that he created a new challenge for them, Charlton.
Yep.
Just like Deshaun Watson did last year. He created a new challenge for NFL defenses.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, the structure of what they have built, they say, okay, we have this criteria of what players should do and look like in our league. When we bring in one of these mobile quarterbacks, and no one blasted Tim Tebow because he was white.
Right.
If you think about that, he was a white quarterback that can run.
And they said he loved God
he
too
was
much.
Intelligent.
And they said he loved God too much. Yeah.
But the black quarterbacks, well, he just athletic.
Yeah.
Tim Tebow was intelligent.
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson is just athletic. So when you look at the scope of how all this stuff is put together, of how certain guys are treated, Tim Tebow was not successful in the NFL, not because of his own undoing, Charlton.
Yep.
Because the status quo said he can't be that and be a white guy in the league, okay?
Yeah.
If he's going to be a white guy and highly mobile, we can't play because we can't blast him like we blast the black quarterbacks.
That's very
But
salient.
what did they do? They found another job for him, Jonathan.
Yeah.
They found a job on television and in baseball.
Yeah.
For Tim Tebow.
Yeah.
He's making as much money in baseball as he was in the NFL, and he was making more probably broadcasting than what he was in the NFL.
Yeah.
So Tim Tebow is that success story because he's white.
Yep.
Not that he was a better player as a football player, as a broadcaster, or even a baseball player than African Americans, Jonathan. But he was lovable, and he was taken care of by the boosters, as they getting that executive job, just like McElroy getting that executive job because of skin privilege.
Big C, race matters in this country. I go back to Cindy Hyde-Smith, reelected as senator of Mississippi. And when I think about Mississippi and the people of color down there, to have their senator say that she would sit front row to lynching. Well, let's play, just turn the opposite side of the universe. What if they had a black senator? And what if he said that he would sit front row at a lynching of white people? What if they had a museum of white people who were being lynched by mobs of black people, and you had a black senator running for office, and the president shows up and said, yeah, I support this person? How would people really feel? I just wonder, and I'm asking my white brethren because I don't know your answer. What goes on in the house of most Americans, especially the ones who support someone like a Cindy Hyde-Smith? If you can have the on air vocalizing that you would sit front row at a lynching, what goes on in your households that makes that okay, that it hasn't died out? And then you go to church on Sunday and you pray to God. What kind of God are you praying to? And I mean that, Big C. How does someone with such racial enmity and animosity get elected and even have POTUS show up? I understand you took the article about the Central Park 5, but I want to know, really, mainstream, I want you to really be honest. What is it about, what do you have conversations on if someone can vouch for going to a lynching in 2018 and you go to the ballot box and you vote her in as your senator, and then the president of the United States of America, which represents all people, he shows up, puts his hand around that woman, and embraces that? What conversations are we not privy to, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, the president said he's the least racist person in America that anybody could ever know. If you Vladimir Putin, you have nothing to worry about. But he's the least racist person that anybody could ever know. But he will embrace, he embraced a pedophile in the state of Alabama, a man that was sexually abusing young girls in Alabama, Roy Moore.
Yep.
The president embraced him. And now he's embracing a vocal racist in Cindy Hyde-Smith, the new senator from Mississippi.
Yep.
Who said she would sit front row at a public hanging. And anybody knows that public hangings in Mississippi that took place over the century, Charlton, were of black men, black women, and black children.
Yeah.
There weren't white people being hung. When you look at the president, celebrating birth of the nation, Woodrow Wilson in the White House, Charlton, celebrating the terrorism of black people in America back in those days, Charlton.
Yep.
That went on for a century in America, Charlton.
Yep.
The terrorism of black Americans by white Americans. And when people say, well, can't you just let stuff go? Well, if you can let stuff go, why do you have voter oppression?
Yeah.
It's not white people should be asking black people, can't you just let stuff go? Why can't white people just let stuff go, Charlton?
Yeah.
They're the ones that keep turning the waters over, Charlton, making them muddy again.
Yeah.
When you look at the actions that they take, just through everything they do, voter suppression, Charlton, voter, fraud, taking away voting polls so that people can't vote, making it difficult to vote, changing up voter, mandates, Charlton.
Yeah.
Taking voter, registrations out of the voting poll, Charlton, saying, well, they can't match the signature.
Yeah.
Why is it only minorities that you can't match the signature on? The thing about it, Charlton, is that poor white people in America need to realistically take a look at themselves.
Yeah.
As the president and the rich white people in America keep saying we're doing better. Poor white people that are living in all those trailer parks, ask themselves, how have you benefited?
Yeah.
How are you better than a minority person in America? How are you better off? Other than skin privilege, Charlton. Other than that, you're still poor and you're still treated like trailer trash when it comes down to it.
Yeah.
Because, when people want to say, well, no, I'm white. No, you're poor and white.
It's about money
now. They don't
now.
treat you like the guy in the suburbs. They don't.
That's true.
They really don't. So when you think that you're better off because you have a president pushing racial rhetoric, saying we're going to take our country back, the country doesn't belong to you. You never had anything to start with. That's the reason why you're poor, just like many minorities.
Yeah.
Because you've been oppressed and you don't even recognize it.
And that's why it's so important, not just to be another dumb show. And again, I'll just to Jim Rome, I've followed him for years. I even know someone that told me how he got started in the business, how he met somebody and some good old boy networks gave him a job. I'm not saying his work is good because he's just bland to me, but he's white, and they kept him around for a long time, and that's fine. Everybody has their own taste. But I'll say this because it's so important. If black men don't advocate for themselves like we did in civil rights, we wouldn't have civil rights if we waited for white Americans. We just wouldn't. They would say the same thing they say now. Well, now's not a good time. Let's not talk about it. You don't want to upset people. But for him to follow Big C Sports and go down to Mississippi and talk about a state we were talking about, but he only talked about the sports aspect because he's an ignorant person. Okay? I still go back to Cindy Hyde-Smith. It's so important, I got to say this. Even her and Donald Trump. I want them to Google Dr. Louis S.B. Leakey. He's considered the world's famous, the foremost paleontologist. Okay? He opined all life came from the African continent, from the womb of a black woman. Dr. Gregory Mendel, the late Dr. Gregory Mendel, he opined that all life came from the same source, that dark skin is dominant, that light skin is recessive, that dark skin can reproduce the light skin, but the light skin cannot reproduce the dark skin. That means that all life came from the African continent, either Donald Trump's ancestry and Cindy Hyde-Smith's ancestry. So when she really wants to go to a lynching, she's going to see a lynching where the birthplace of all civilization looks like those people who were lynched came from there, Big C. And even deeper than that, that hue of color can reproduce her color. She can't reproduce that color. That's nature. If you're mad at, be mad at God, or at least Google Dr. Gregory Mendel. Last thing I'll get into, Big C, in the final 10 minutes. I just love when we can talk about what's real because it's a test, a science test. Google it, please. We can stop it. We can stop discrimination if we talk about it. And I wonder why the Mississippi State basketball coach, how does he explain to his black athletes that the senator is talking about lynchings and she would attend it and may even attend some of the games, and he didn't even advocate for his boys? No one advocated for them. Only Big C Sports. I guess they would say that we're intellectually educated, but we should all talk about it, Big C. Last few things, college football championships Friday. We have number 17 Utah, they're 9-3, versus number 11 Washington, 9-3 for the Pac-12 title. Levi Stadium Saturday, number 14 Texas, 9-3 versus number 5 Oklahoma, 8-1 for the Big 12 title, and that's in Arlington, Texas. We have Memphis 8-4 versus UCF, Central Florida, 8-0 for the American Conference Championship in Orlando. Big C, Memphis and UCF. If UCF wins, they'll at least get my vote to be placed in there among those 4 teams. I want to get your thoughts again. Number 1 Alabama, 12-0 versus Georgia. Georgia is 11-1. It's the SEC championship in Atlanta. I know we've talked about it before. Do both teams deserve to get in? If Alabama loses, yes. If Georgia loses, no. Your thoughts, Big C?
Well, Charlton, it's a tough thing because, like I said, this is a beauty contest.
Yeah.
That you're looking at. Everybody right now on that selection committee, Charlton, wants to have those 2 teams in. They want to have Georgia and Alabama play twice again this year, Charlton. Think about that. You know, they played twice last year. Wasn't enough. They want them to play twice again this year. What does that prove, Charlton? Because when you split in a series, and they split it last year when Alabama beat them in the last game, it made them the national champion.
Yeah.
Georgia dominated them, Charlton, earlier. So why weren't they the national champion, or even at least co-national champions?
Yeah.
So when you look at this, Charlton, as we talked earlier in the program about excluding teams from the tournament, how is it fair? If you lose in your final game of the season, you're out. Think about this. Everybody who has lost, Charlton, in the last 3 weeks in college football, how far have they fallen in the rankings? Yeah. They have fallen at least 3 spots in the rankings, minimum, if not 4. Yeah. So you can't sit there and justifiably, when Oklahoma lost to Texas in a 48-43 shootout, I think at the time they were ranked number 2 or 3 in the country, Charlton. They fell out of the top 10. Yeah. Out of the top 10. They fell 7 spots out of the top 10. So when you think about that, how do you justify if a team loses now, well, that loss is less impactful than what a loss would be? Look how far Michigan fell the other day when they lost to Ohio State. Yeah. Look how far West Virginia fell when they lost to Oklahoma. Yeah. So as you think about those losses, Charlton, that those teams have had, now all of a sudden when you get to this point of the season in the final week, if you're an SEC team, Charlton, that loss is not as devastating because you're in the conference championship. Yep. Look how far Washington State fell last week when they lost to the University of Washington, Charlton. Yeah. So it's not an impartial jury when we talk about these selection committees and these conference playoff championship games, Charlton.
Hold on, Big C. I think we're getting some static on your microphone, but okay, Big C, we got you back now. I think POTUS was listening in again, Big C. Him and Cindy Hyde-Smith trying to tap the Big C sports line, Big C. Go right ahead, sir.
You know, heaven forbid if Clemson was to lose. How far would Clemson fall, Charlton?
Yeah.
You know, they've been number 2 all year long.
Yeah.
They were in the national championship last year, though. Well, 2 years ago, and they won it.
Yeah.
How far would they fall, Charlton, if they lost in their conference championship game? So there's no justifying, Charlton, these teams that are in the conference championship games, if they lose, that they should qualify.
That's
because
true.
it automatically eliminates Oklahoma. It would automatically eliminate Ohio State. Why even have 4 and 5 if number 5 and 6, if number 4 beats number 1 and 5 and 6 can't move in?
Yep.
It doesn't justify even having the rankings, Charlton.
That's true, Big C. Last 5 minutes, we have Clemson playing Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh 7-5. Why even be in the championship game? We talked about Ohio State, Northwestern. Northwestern's 8-4, and they're in the Big Ten championship game. Doesn't make any sense. With coaching vacancies already filled, Kansas, Les Miles, North Carolina, Mac Brown. Will any African Americans get an opportunity for a head coaching job in the Power 5? Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, no. They won't even get an interview. When you look around the country, Charlton, and you say, well, you have a dozen coaching vacancies right now, Charlton, in Division I programs.
Yeah.
How many African Americans will get a consideration? None. And you have to ask yourself why. Why can you recruit African American athletes, but you can't interview African Americans for a head coaching job?
Yeah.
You're going to say that they're intellectually vapid?
Wow.
They cannot coach and command the presence of these young men. There have been many successful African-American coaches. Look at Dino Favors, who was given an opportunity at Syracuse.
Yeah.
How he has turned that program around, Charlton, and made them very competitive in the ACC.
Yeah, very true,
This
Big
is
C.
a team that he brought from nowhere to being a competitive team. But he was given an opportunity, Charlton. When you look across this country and say, well, how many of these white coaches that can keep losing, and no one says, well, you know, they need a couple more years to get in their own players. You hear that all the time. Why can't you give an African-American coach a couple more years to get in their own players? I go back to Dennis Green when he was at Stanford.
Yeah.
Turned that program around, Charlton, made it a winner.
Yeah.
After Bill Walsh had left, they had gone down. Dennis Green came in, turned the program around. After he left, Tyrone Willingham went in, built that program back up, Charlton.
Yeah.
Tyrone Willingham went to Notre Dame. He was fired. They brought in Charlie Weiss. Charlie Weiss never had a year better than any year that Tyrone Willingham had. Matter of fact, the best 3 years he had at Notre Dame were right after Tyrone Willingham had lost. And whose players was he playing with, Charlie?
Yeah.
Tyrone Willingham players.
Yeah, we've
In
seen.
the 5th year when he was playing with his own players, Charlton, they fired him because he could not coach. So when you look around, Charlton, at the success that African-American coaches have had in the limited opportunities they've had in college football. And people say, well, look at Florida State. Todd hasn't done anything down there. Well, look at the players that he inherited from Jimbo Fisher.
Yeah.
How successful was Jimbo Fisher this year at Texas A&M, Charlton?
Yeah.
He didn't go in and challenge for a conference title.
No.
People said, well, he's got to get his own players in. It's always an excuse for a white coach that he has to get his own players in.
So does Todd.
For a black coach, it doesn't work that way. Even at Texas, when we look at where they are, and everybody's saying they're back. They have 3 losses this year, Charlton.
Yeah.
Yes, they're in the conference championship game, but there's teams with more wins in the conference that's not even in the conference championship game.
Big C,
They beat Texas.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Everybody knows it's about color sometime. I want to close out on our last segment here, Big C. When you look at the standards of the NFL, giving second and third opportunities to players that have abused women, the 49ers cutting Reuben Foster and the Washington Redskins signing him. We know the woman that was in the... I want to defend women. I know that she's had some accusations made before against other men and she's retracted them. But I still want to defend women because sometimes they're in a situation where they don't have the power to even fight back. So that's just my own thoughts. But people jumping on the Redskins for doing something that's foolish. Jerry Jones did the same thing. But I want to bring this point about the Mara family for the New York Giants. They had a white guy, their kicker. His name eludes me at this time. But
Josh Brown.
Josh Brown beat his wife over 20 times. He's a Caucasian man. He's white. Produce would call him a good guy. That's what Produce would say about him. Not only did they have it happen 20 times, they gave him a $2 million raise. Why are people up in arms about Reuben Foster being accused of something, I think, 3 times, Big C, But Josh Brown, 20 times, I think 20 minus 3 is 17, and he got a $2 million raise from it. Why such hypocrisy, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's a total hypocrisy when we look at the miscarriage of justice, how it's been done. You know, how black athletes are being carried around. I'm not condoning anything that Reuben Foster, is accused of. I believe it would be a very heinous act if it's found to be accurate, Charlton.
Yep.
And he should be punished justifiably. You know, but when you look at how it's been handled in the NFL, when white players have committed domestic violence, Charlton, it comes down to counseling.
Yeah.
You know, let's get him and the wife together, or the significant other together, Charlton, for counseling. When the black player, when they've been accused of this, Charlton, no, they're out of a job.
Yeah.
Period. They get no atonement whatsoever. They get no sympathy from anybody. We're not going to hear this in a court. We're just going to cut them, just like the 49ers did. They just cut Reuben Foster. He was accused on a road game, and I question, why was she there in Tampa? If they're dating each other in San Francisco,
yeah,
why is she in Tampa? Doesn't the team have a rule where the players need to be with the players?
Yeah.
I know when I was there, Charlton, we had curfew.
Yeah.
Okay? They came by and checked. You had to be in your room. Otherwise, it was a huge fine.
Yeah.
So what gives him the ability to be out? What happened to the policing internally from the league? But as you talk about Josh Brown and the Mara family being hypocritical about other people in the NFL, Charlton,
yep,
and the NFL and every broadcaster out there, and I look at this, Charlton, it doesn't make any difference whether this broadcaster is black, whether they're white, whether they're Hispanic, whether they're Asian, Charlton. None of them have addressed the Josh Brown incident, Charlton.
No.
They talk about Reuben Foster and how bad this looks for the Washington Redskins.
Yeah.
Them signing this guy after he was released by the San Francisco 49ers. But Doug Williams spoke out and said, hey, he can't dress for the Washington Redskins. We claimed his rights as an NFL player.
Yeah.
But he has to be cleared by the league, and if he's cleared by the league, he has to deal with counseling and other things, Charlton. He never said, we're going to dress this player. All we did was obtain their rights, okay? That's it. We didn't do what the Mara family, and I wish Doug Williams had said that in his statement. A team within our division, the New York Giants, and the Mara family, and Tom Coughlin,
yep,
protected Josh Brown for several years as he beat his then wife, Charlton,
20 times,
and had over 20 police reports, documented police reports that the Giants knew about, that he did. They suspended him one game, Charlton, over that period while he was beating his wife. He got a one-game suspension.
Yeah.
And they never said what this suspension was about, Charlton. He was just suspended. He was inactive for one game. That's how the statement read. Josh Brown was inactive for a game.
Yep.
Never said he was suspended for beating his wife. But for the media to want to take Foster and run him under the bus, saying that he's been the only player that has done this, Charlton. This is hypocrisy in the media and the NFL, because the white players that have done this, Charlton, we've never heard about it. The African Americans, even though I don't condone any of that, and I think all of them are evil for doing that, for hitting a woman, they only talk about the African Americans. Any person out there in the public knows that the majority of spousal abuse comes from Caucasian males.
Yep.
You're going to tell me that in all the NFL, that none of these Caucasian males have committed domestic violence? I mean, just being honest.
Be honest.
They have not committed domestic violence. It is there. It is covered up. It is not talked about. They go to counseling. They get counseling. And that's what the team steers them towards. They don't make it public like they have with the black athletes.
They don't, and that's why God created Big C Sports. We just ask people to Google. Even if you don't like what we say, at least like Google Big C. Back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man. He would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in this boys' universe?
Well, Charlton, I'm looking forward to tomorrow night. You know, we got this big game coming up in the NFC. We got the New Orleans Saints going down to Dallas, AT&T Stadium. This is a battle, Charlton, for the NFC East title. Not in this game, but for the NFC East title. You think about it. Dallas loses this game. Philadelphia beats Washington. There is a three-way tie and a sprint for the NFC East title, Dalton, because all three teams will be 6-6.
Yeah.
With 4 games remaining. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Well, Big C, it's all fair and love and war. We just ask people to Google, and next time you go down to the South, when you just had something so egregious, please don't just talk about the basketball team that happens to be the victims of that garbage. I want to say every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide, follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, as we always tell you, there's never, ever any excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please call 911, because no man or woman should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you, on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.